we've basically got fuel consumption of a 60s bus and masturbation so far. That's it. All right, go on.
The brakes were so bad and so unexpected, I drove straight off the circuit and straight to the scene of the accident.
I think that is easily the nicest answer to a question I've never asked before in my life.
I'm here to help.
Considered, it was lovely. Hello and welcome to the Car Podcast with Chris Harris and his friends, episode 9. I just said 8 on a previous recording, letting you behind the fourth wall. Okay, here we go. We're going to dive straight in. I'm going to ask these boys a very, very serious question. It is this. Here we go. Prove that you have mechanical sympathy without saying it and using your driving to demonstrate. In other words, what do we look for as those subtle little indicators that someone really gets it? Now, I know a man who spent far too long thinking about this. He's at the bottom of my screen. His name's Chris Cooper.
Well, this is... How long have we got on this? Have we got all day?
All week? For you, we have.
This is about respect for the machine. It's about respect for the machine, and it's about demonstrating a love for the craft of driving the mechanically propelled road carriage. That's what this is about. And I think you've either got it or you haven't. I think you can learn it, but I think because it's about respect for the machine and everything in it, if you still don't get it, you don't get it. How would you spot it? I mean, there are loads. I mean, it's just, and I don't want to go through my usual list, but I do have one.
I like this. Do you have one that you would choose above all others as your sort of denominator of having the skill?
When you put the handbrake on, you put the button in. When you pull the handbrake up, an old handbrake.
I've got it on my. It's the top of my list. It's the top of my list.
Ratchet it. If anybody gets into a car that I'm into handbrake and does a ratchet, I will get out.
I'm showing to those that can't see this. I'm showing my notebook. Don't use the ratchet on the handbrake.
Can I have one? Can I have two more? One,
yes.
One's generic, one's personal.
Yes.
If you're going down a hill, like in traffic, and it's a hill. You're not braking. It's just a hill, and those people around you, certainly in front of you, can see, and they're going down the hill and they're riding the brakes. I hate that. Yeah. That's what the gearbox is for. Engine compression. If you're not braking for a corner or slow traffic, the car should be at a constant speed. If it's a hill, you should choose a gear commensurate and appropriate for the gradient thing. That's quite good, isn't it, that? See how my elbow's going up and the car's going down at the front. So you use a gearbox. So if you choose that, you just use lower gear. It keeps control. People who change gear with a manual gearbox are very fast. They literally move their hand really quickly, somehow to signify that they're driving fast. No. Almost the faster you go, the slower and more deliberate. It should be one flowing motion. The whole thing, clutch, gear lever, hand, one flowing motion. It's respect for the machine. Respect for the machine is at the heart of my last one. And actually, Mr. Harris, this is about you. When you shut a car door, which part of the car door do you put your hand on to close it?
Not the glass.
I mean, I can't tell you how many anxieties and angst that triggered in me in your beautiful GT3 film with Mr. P. And to his enormous credit, he pointed it out.
Yeah. Of course, if you've done what I've done for a living for 25 years, there comes a point where you have to get over that one, unfortunately.
But don't you think it's a bit like an old Mini? When you shut the door on an old Mini, you have to almost hold it up because Mini doors drop.
Yeah.
So it's respect for the machine. So shutting a car door, you just push on the handle because that's sort of where the striker plate is. It's basically making sure when the door closes, the point of pressure on the door is aligned with the striker plate, so there's no bending or respect for the machine. I think mechanical sympathy is just brilliant.
Yeah, that was lovely. That was a bit like sort of being thrust into a Pathé news item from 1952.
Yeah,
and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now we just need Mr. Chumley Warmer to come on and warn women against driving, and we'll be complete.
Know your limits.
No, limits. Neil Clifford, how do you feel about this? And actually, is this something you couldn't give an SH1T about?
No. I absolutely give a fuck about it.
You.
A damn.
Sometimes we don't know.
That's true. I like to be unpredictable.
Yeah, it's good. No, I'm glad that we're together on this one.
I can often surprise myself and with my opinions. I think it's very clear that I've got incredible mechanical sympathy because I've never, this is honest because it sounds bullshit. I've never worn out a clutch.
Yeah.
I've never had a clutch go on me.
Yeah,
I think that's quite a big deal, isn't it?
That is a big
And
deal.
before you say, "Oh, that's because,"
For the benefit of those that can't see us, we're all clapping.
Yes, but I would say something in addition to that. To be a Chris Cooper and not have one, but have two. I don't think I've ever. This is sort of a bit embarrassing, actually. I've never worn out a set of tyres.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Which I know Chris would be embarrassed about that. I've worn out a set of tyres via age when you take it for a service and they say, we'd just like to point out, Mr. Clifford, that those tyres are 2012. I didn't actually know that tyres had a bloody sell-by date, like being in M. Marks and Spencer's. I think that's all a bit bullshit, frankly.
No, it's not.
No, don't. Let's not get all kid.
I'll tell you what, I'll bring to you a Lamborghini Diablo on 15-year-old rear Pirellis on a wet day.
I could handle it.
I could take that on.
So I've only ever worn out a set of tyres with a date, as opposed to, you know, those silly videos you get from Porsche dealerships, and they say, "I'm just sending you your free check," and it's 6.7 on the front, on the right, and 6.2 on the. You've still got plenty of tread, sir. I've never gone down to 3 ever.
Yeah, what is 3?
I think but I'm always at 6.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's mechanical sympathy, isn't it?
It definitely is mechanical sympathy.
It's something, yeah.
Never worn out a clutch.
I like that. Yeah. I'll give you that one. That's lovely. Manish, in your extensive ownership experience, how do
you know what?
By the way, just to let you know, I was with Manish yesterday, finishing a job off in another country, and he saw the agenda that I'd sent round to my learned colleagues, and he went, "Well, that's great," because he was all about car ownership. Okay, Manish, off you
go. 2 things. I can't stand it when people slam doors on cars. I've got a really big thing about, especially from the inside. You know, you often see people do that, sort of twat a car door in a great big shake. So on the inside, I've got a really big thing about you pull it, and then I try to do all of my accelerating with the car door in the last inch. So you get a little. That's what you do. That's what you should do. A 456 is notorious for the windows dropping.
Sorry, 456. You should have mentioned it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking. So, again, but the 456, you mustn't shut the doors with the glass because they've got this habit of sliding down anyway. And so that's a very, very careful point. But I've got another tiny point. Whenever I take any kind of half decent lengthy trip, not that often, but when I do it, I always check my tire pressures. And I always get the tire pressures right. And a little more aesthetic point of sympathy, probably than a mechanical one, I always have the car cleaned before I go on any.
I think that's good.
I agree with that.
Outside and inside. A dirty car inside is, and outside, don't like it at all. Don't do it. Oh no, really?
Oh
no! Actually, that's Cooper. I do not believe Mr. Cooper has a dirty car.
No. His cars are immaculate. I'm laughing at myself. There's stuff living in some of my cars.
You're below me on my screen. It's Harris there.
Yeah, I see on my screen. You're pointing at Mr. Cooper, and I'm just like, no way, absolutely not a possibility.
No. I'm with you, Manish. I think a clean car is physically nicer to drive.
Yeah,
100%.
It just, you don't have that sort of rustling sound. It feels tighter. It feels like even once you've cleaned it, it feels like the tires are at the right pressure. Everything just feels better. And I have to say, I've always, because you are you're a very good. I mean, you're obviously, Chris, you're a really, really good driver, and you're a very thoughtful driver, and you think about the art of driving a lot. And I love driving as a passenger with you because the car it just flows. It just flows. A mechanical sympathy, but Jesus Christ, being inside one. When and I'm lucky enough, we've had some lovely cars, you and I, on some journeys. And when he comes to the farm, it's such a thing now. Lynn comes to the back door when she sees your car coming through the farm gate. She comes to the back door and she said, "How big a plastic sack do you need to get all the rubbish out of the car?" It's that bad. She said, I know how painful it'll be for you to get into that car. So have a whip round, literally, just get all the crisp packets and the dog chews. Put the dog chew in because you'll need that later.
Yeah.
Put that in somewhere where it won't rattle. Wrap it in something. Yeah.
May I just say, the first kind of mechanical sympathy. Sorry, I was going to say, when I was 17 and learning to drive, the first time I felt that I had any kind of mechanical sympathy was, when you really do manage to pull up to a junction without using your handbrake and just get that beautiful balancing point between the accelerator, the brake, and the clutch. And you just find you don't need a handbrake because you're just, that is one of the most wonderful driving feelings ever, I think.
I asked the boys this, and Cameron said, never use a handbrake or put a handbrake on when the car is on a level surface. And I know what he means, which is it just sticks on. It just might, and if you're on a level surface, it's not going to roll away.
I don't do that. I never use the handbrake in that situation. Do you?
Yeah, no.
I very rarely use a bloody handbrake.
Or leave it in gear. Just leave it in gear.
Yeah, leave it in gear.
Most of these have been covered. I mean, I always remember, I don't know whether it was apocryphal or not, the idea that the IAM in the early days would take you out on the motorway and you'd be tested to see whether you could drive at a certain speed without using the brakes. I think there's a real craft to driving at high speed on a motorway and demonstrating to those around you that you've got it covered, that you can judge the distance in front of you. You don't need to shock people behind you by using the brakes. I'm not saying I do that the whole time, but when you see it, you rarely see it executed on the road. When you do, you go, there, that person gets it. Because actually, there's a good chance that at the end of that journey, not only their fuel consumption will be quite good, their brakes will have lasted longer. All the things that mattered. So don't brake on a motorway is important for me. Clutch control in general was something that was very classy, and often I used to like it, and I still like it now. When you get in a car with someone who probably doesn't know they have any driving skill. It could be a taxi driver. It could just be sort of stranger. The idea of getting in a car with a stranger driving fills me with the fear of God normally.
Yeah, don't do that, kids.
I love it. I love it when you sometimes go,
Charlie says,
this person doesn't know how good they are. They're sitting in a 17-seater minivan on a hill, not using the handbrake, just idly just holding it on the bike point. Yeah. This is quite difficult, and they're doing a really good job.
Have you ever? I think that's a really important one. Have you ever told anybody that, a stranger you've been in a car with, to say, "Do you know you're really good at this?"
I did 2 days ago.
I have. Yeah.
I also said slightly archly when we've been driven through Bologna Central by Lorenzo Bandini's grandson on Monday morning.
You called him Bandini. I actually called him
because he was doing like 80 and a 20 through the bus lanes, everything. Obviously, we had all the approvals to do it, but so I said to him, "Well driven," but what I meant was "phew." So no, but I always do.
You can't. We were trying to catch a train. Okay, we were trying to catch a train. I know, but I've never been so nervous in my life. I literally wanted to get out of this car and just throw up. I've never been tossed around a car like that in my life. And he's not kidding. The guy was doing 80 in bus lanes, wrong side of the road, red lights. Who cares about those? Whoa. Oh my days.
He was extreme. I'll give you another one though. If actually the deliberately avoiding using the ratchet on a handbrake is I mean, you could write a book about that. Because the person doing it, if they know they're doing it and it's going to be appreciated, is so pleased with themselves. Because what they're saying is, I'm about to demonstrate to this person in this car who I think gets it that we've got something in common. And that in itself is another part of our weird therapy, is the fact that you meet people that you know that are on your wavelength. The other one of those that I always used to love was, I always remember as a child getting into a car, and most adults who I now realise couldn't drive for toffee would get in. They were all manual cars, and they'd go to check the neutral, would be quite a sort of aggressive throwaway movement. And I can remember the first time I got in a car with someone who I now know, I won't say his name to embarrass him, can really drive. And instead he got in the car and he just put his hand on inside the lever and just pushed it to one side and let it spring back. He didn't need to do that. He just went, now I know I'm in neutral. And away we went. And I remember thinking, it was a difference that even as a sort of probably 10-year-old I noticed that he had an affinity with the machine. He wanted, and I think this is maybe the thing, that we anthropomorphize these objects. And I often want the car to end the journey and go, that was good.
Yeah.
You did a good job, son.
Yeah.
You know what? And sometimes I think with me, and you've seen it professionally, the car goes, "Get the fuck out! I never want to see you again. What you've just done to me is illegal." Yeah. And I'm sorry for all the cars that I've done that to, but that was in the name of entertainment. But broadly speaking, I want the car to go, that you did a good job. Thank you. I'll have you back.
Yeah, that's nice. It'd be nice to get a little out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's move on. So, because we were in Italy yesterday, this came up. So, here we go. Where are we? Sorry, I lost my list there. I need to read this. It's quite specific, the wording. Keep still at the back, please. Keep still at the back. Where are we?
I'll read it for you.
You have to rob a bank in Turin in 1967. You need an escape vehicle that is low-key brackets-ish and isn't a Mini. Choose one. I'm going to go straight to Neil Clifford here because I think this is kind of his era.
Well, it's what year? When am I wrong? Oh, the year I was born.
Is it?
Very important year, 1967. Yeah.
And me.
I suppose I'm going to go straight to the obvious. It's got to be a Fiat because Turin 67 probably is 70% Fiat, and if you want to escape, you're better off be driving a Fiat, in my view, because there's going to be lots of them, so you're gonna sort of be camouflaged, and then it's got to have a bit of pace, isn't it? I'm jumping straight to what's a prettiest car, convertible or coupe. I'm going back to my last week car, but I'm choosing the ugly one. I'm choosing the coupe because if you go cabriolet, you're going to get spotted. It's going to be a bit rarer. They're going to see your nervousness or the fact that you're British or you've got your England scarf on or whatever's going to give you away. So I'm going Fiat Dino, obviously 2.4, not 2 litre. So we've got a little bit of pace. Fiat Dino Coupe 2.4.
I like it. I can see a good blend of handling, pace, subterfuge, and a bit of style as well. So afterwards in the pub, you can say to your mates, and you won't believe what we got away in.
Yeah, silver tan. Yeah, I could have gone Julia. I had a big list, but I'm sticking to my one Fiat Dino Coupe 2.4.
Only Neil Clifford could have worked out what colour combination of exterior and leather he'd have for a getaway. Okay, let's go for Manish Pandey, please.
Well, I think the Turin police appreciate a bit of style and speed in their bank robbers. So I'm driving away in a Ferrari 250 LM in a Rosso Corsa. And they go, "You want to have an escort with this? No problem. We take you into the tunnel." And that's what I'm doing. Really simple, very quick. Catch me if you can.
How often has a bank been robbed and the ultimate loot hasn't been as valuable as the vehicle in which the wrong uns escaped? I like that. And also, no space for the loot whatsoever.
None at all.
Go on that flat rear deck. I like it, Manish. Not often we get the absurd from you, but we are this time.
Thank you very much.
Chris Cooper.
Will the QI klaxon go off if I mention the Italian Job?
What you're saying is a film called The Italian Job that might have had a similar conceit to what was proposed here. We should be in the film business with ideas like this.
I know. Because I say that for lots of reasons. Because otherwise we'd spend the whole evening doing the quotes from the Italian Job. But the Fiat Dino Coupe in the Italian Job, black one, the Altabani,
the
mafia boss.
Yeah,
I thought it was the coolest car in the film.
Yep,
mega.
I
thought it was
loved
the
it.
coolest car in the film. Really, really nice looking thing. It was just right. It was just not too much, but it was just beautifully judged. So I don't think low profile works because the Mini was supposed to be low profile and they got completely stuck, and in the end it didn't really work, and blah blah blah. Do you know that in 2008, I read this on Wikipedia this afternoon, the Royal Institute of Chemistry instituted a competition to see how they would have got off the edge of the cliff when Michael Caine said, "Hang about, lads, I've got a good idea or plan, whatever." And you go onto Wikipedia. We haven't got enough time now, but go onto Wikipedia and see what it's quite interesting. How they had a competition to see how we could do it. How could they get the thing back up right, get the weight right?
Okay, without spoiling, actually, I'm going to ask you to spoil it. Please tell me there was a chance they could survive.
It was a really good. The winning answer was a winning answer.
Okay,
don't we all think about that when we watch that movie? That's the one thing we think about.
I know.
You all run out together, let the thing go over the cliff, and go down and get the fucking gold.
No, you see that's what it didn't do. So what I had in my mind every time I watch it to say, you knock some glass out, you've got to take weight out the back of the bus. So you got to knock some glass out.
Good idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Knock the glass out, and if you try and scoop it back to the back of the bus, somebody in the competition that the Royal Institute of Chemistry did said you'd run the engine and eventually the petrol would all be used up, and that was at the back. So that would start to sort of balance it a bit. You'd knock some windows out the front so they could get out of the windscreen, but you make sure that the glass get in, all this kind of thing. So yeah, it was a happy ending. Not that kind of happy ending, but a happy ending. So it does work. It does work. So, but because of that, I quite like the Fiat idea.
Podcast going. Has he talked about a car yet?
Yeah.
No.
In the film,
we've basically got fuel consumption of a 60s bus and masturbation so far. That's it. Right, go on.
I didn't say any of that.
I'm sending this to Lynn. I'm
the
shocked.
Inside of your car is just so mucky in every sense. I think you'd have a Ford Galaxy 500.
Yes.
Why? Because you could put some loot in it.
Yeah.
How much gold could those minis have had in it? I've got a mini. Neil, you've got a mini. Answer, not very much.
Well, and he said rob a bank. He didn't say it was full of gold. I've got 2 bearer bonds. That's it.
It's not really that exciting, though, is it?
Manish has got a point. I didn't specify how heavy the
If I was going to rob a bank, I'd do it properly.
It'll be diamonds.
Yeah, it's got to have. It's either. Yeah, it's got to be. Manish, you're in the film business. You're never going to sell tickets for that. So I'd have a Ford Galaxy 500 because it could, to quote from another film, Ronin, something that's fast and can shovel. That was the Audi S8 in that.
And the Carabinieri would go, "We're looking for an English bloke. Yeah, he's in the only Ford Galaxy 500 in continental Europe. You should spot him."
Yeah,
but catch him. That's another thing. So I think you'd have a Ford Galaxy 500, big boot. It'd be a 63.
Yep.
With those rocket launcher, rocket jet tail lights.
Yeah.
Because the Italians with their police cars that have got 5 reverse gears and only 1 forward gear, they would look at those. They would look at those and say, that's a bit much. We'll just surrender now."
You run out of petrol in 10 minutes, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, that's the sequel.
Yeah.
It just keeps having to stop every.
Yes.
I mean, I'm immediately obsessed now. I'm going to buy a black Fiat Dino Coupe.
Yeah, that's going to happen. I can tell it is.
You know,
I like these. I don't think I can beat these. But the one thing that you reference a film called The Italian Job, which I must speak to whoever's made that film because it feels they might have stolen one of my ideas. But it does remind me that I think I might have seen this film. I was struck by how many non-Italian cars there were in the film, in the traffic jams and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a much more cosmopolitan array of cars than I thought. Am I imagining that? That you're all scholars of this film, but there is more out there, isn't there?
I think they planted them, though. I think in real life they'd have all been Italian.
Okay.
They'd all been bits.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Neil's just taken away at the shins there, so we can just cut that bit out. So I'm gonna. There's a car that I always thought was a baddies car. It was a bit. It was used in the Sweeney a bit. It was used in some Brit films and TV shows. I think the Triumph 2000 and its estate counterpart was just a baddies car. I love them, and I've always. I immaturely, I'll admit that I created this little challenge for my fellow podcasters because I wanted to do a bank job in a 2.5 litre estate Triumph, a 2.5 PI. And now there's two problems with this. You've all chosen better cars. Afterwards, I researched it and it worked. And it turns out the 2.5 wasn't launched until the middle of the following year. So I couldn't have used it anyway. So there are two rules here. One, do your research, kids, before you pose challenges to clever people like these three, because I've balls this right up. Because at the moment, I've got a pre-facelift, a Mark 1 2 litre, which couldn't pull the skin off a rice pudding. So I'm looking at doing a load of pokey. I'll get caught with the loot. I'm not going to get away with this. But I wanted a 2.5 litre Triumph Estate because I think they just is the ultimate getaway vehicle.
What colour?
I think it's
a dark maroon or a dark green.
Oh, the maroon, yeah.
Remember the maroon?
Yeah. I'm sure Carmine. Was it called Carmine Red?
Could have been.
Maroon
There's going to be some vinyl on the roof. There'll be some wood that's peeling off the dash after 3 months. But I tell you what, they had 132 horsepower back then. That's a lot of power.
Was that carb or PI?
PI. With the overdrive, they would sit at 110 miles an hour. I love them. I think they're great looking cars.
Yeah, the estate's super
overdrive is really... Lynn's got a TR6 with overdrive. And her overdrive, it's the lever on the steering column.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I've got overdrive in a Mark 1 Jag.
There's no interruption of drive. It's like in the 60s when these things arrived, it must have sounded like the most amazing, magical, mercurial technology.
Yeah,
but your ones would have the little sort of knurl.
It's a little glass knob.
I remember in a Triumph Dolomite, it was like a little switch, a Bakelite switch on top of the lever, wasn't it?
Yeah, little sort of knurlings on it.
Yeah, that's right. Mine's illuminated.
So wait, before we move on, because I always get criticised for doing this, so I'm going to do it again. I always get criticised for just wedging in a quick Bernie anecdote. Okay,
you won't hear of that. We'd never criticise you.
Well, I know you don't. Somebody in the comments doesn't like this. So I'm going to do one.
They can do one.
Contrary, isn't it? You know the scene in The Italian Job when they're all sitting around the table and Michael Caine's introducing them. And, he's saying, Camp Freddy for obvious reasons and things like that. He's sort of going through all of these. And that is actually Bernie Ecclestone's flat.
Is it?
It was shot in, yes. It's amazing. Jeffrey Archer lives there now, but that was actually Bernie Ecclestone's flat. And he bought it from John Barry.
Yeah.
I actually think it's just the best factoid. So they're there.
Brilliant factoid.
Bernie's apartment.
Did he... I've often wondered whether Bernie supplied the posh-sounding blokes who were the racing drivers, Charles and Chris and hello, chaps.
Yeah, these three chinless wonders will get you
through Turin.
And there we are, promising not to quote from The Italian Job.
Sorry.
This is massively important. This probably should have been at the top of the show. Can you call this a show? At the top of the collected ramblings of these people. What's best? Big accelerated pedals or little ones? Come on, as a kid. Right, I'm going to start with Neil Clifford. He gets first dibs here. Come on.
I didn't really know the answer to this, which I know is like a stupid thing to say because you've got to have an answer. I wear big shoes. I'm a size.
You know what they say?
Yeah, it's not true. I'm a size 45. 45 and a half even.
This podcast.
Somehow your shoes your feet get bigger. What's all that about? Therefore, big shoes and little gas pedal doesn't really work. It all gets a bit fucked up. So I prefer big accelerator pedal.
Are we back to Professor?
Yes. Don't you start. I'm going to move on to you now, Cooper, because you. For those that can't see, Chris Cooper is lubricating himself rather well with some more beer. So
let's go.
Let's go. Okay, so
our new sponsor.
Okay, so what's best? Big accelerator pedals or little ones?
I think what's more important than that is how they feel.
Okay.
That's not the question, though.
Well, it isn't. You're right. But you didn't have an answer. I didn't like the question.
Big. I said big.
I'm teasing. I think feel and travel are more important. If you're wearing big shoes, I've got quite big feet, not as big as Neil's. And if you've got boots on, you're driving a Land Rover Defender off, in the countryside, you've got to have a pedal. Otherwise, you just can't find it, and you've got to have a big pedal. But there's something really, really lovely about a dinky little throttle pedal.
Yeah.
With a little sort of almost like those ones with a little sort of like a little sort of ring at the end of it. The throttle pedal, the end of the pedal, little ring of metal. And something that feels quite light, a bit of travel. So if you're heel and toeing, or even just, being mechanically sympathetic, I think the feel of the pedal. So I once drove, I don't know whether you've tried it, Chris. Team Parker have one of, it's not quite one of one, but it's one of not very many of the JPE 250 Caterhams, the Johnson Palmer Evolution.
Oh, that's a cool little car, that.
It is. It's got the red top Swindon Vauxhall touring car engine.
Has it got the fluorescent bits on it?
Yes, it does have fluorescent bits on it. Andy Parker's got it, and he wheels it occasionally. I felt very privileged. We had a track day. Remember our yellow Porsche? I took it to a track day once at Spa with some chums, and Andy brought this along. And it was like sort of, now you've been with us about 10 years, Chris. We think it's about time you might like to try this. And it was this Caterham JP, whatever it was.
JPE.
The throttle pedal on that is the heaviest throttle. Your foot, I could only about a lap in it. The pedal was so stiff and strong. I said to him, you ever thought of putting just a lesser spring in there? Because literally pressing and holding it down, you thought, God, my foot's bloody sore. So not too heavy on the spring, nice long travel. And I think something delicate. I think under the heading of mechanical sympathy, that works really well.
I think that is easily the nicest answer to a question I've never asked before in my life.
I'm here to help.
Considered, it was lovely. Wonderful. Manish.
I approached it in a kind of inverse Neil way. I decided to just look up 3 drivers' shoe sizes. So Fangio was a size 5.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Fangio
had the feet of a tiny little child.
Was that his foot?
He had size 5 feet.
Right, that's your first official steady. That's your first official?
I got a black and white flag now.
But people were smaller then. They didn't have carbs.
So he was a very small man. So Senna had size 8 feet, and Lewis apparently has size 9.
Yeah.
So you've got 3, I think, pretty stellar drivers there. I don't know what Max Verstappen's foot size is. I imagine it's an 11, actually, seeing the way he drives. But the point is, you've got this little variation in champions' feet. And so I guess the answer is, what's the best? Probably there isn't a best, because we've just done the bell curve of foot sizes. And they're all great drivers. And I guess, if it was all about having a teeny tiny pedal, then maybe, Senna's feet would be too big and Lewis is way too big. So what we do know is do you remember George Russell in Bahrain? he had to cut the top off his shoe to get it into the footwell. So I'd imagine maybe he found having said that, the pedal would have been the same size as Lewis. And so I don't know if there's an answer to this. I've just given you 3 vaguely tangential facts that might.
Oh, you give me some lovely facts that didn't even attempt to answer the question that I asked. So once again, like Chris Cooper, I love this. I want to remind all our viewers and listeners that we are all, I think, mostly sober, but this is turning into the episode where the shark was truly jumped. So I'm going to attempt to answer the question that I posed. And actually, maybe I wasn't. There was a little prompt in here
we've missed.
I hoped that you'd go back to your childhood and maybe you'd make the same observation as me, which was, and this is shameful but lovely, and I think children did do this. This is up there with the speedometers and the numbers and cars. I used to think, I think that a bigger throttle pedal, accelerator pedal, meant it was a faster car. It was a faster car. So I can remember the first time I looked into the footwell of my parents' respective cars. The estate car would have been something like we had an Audi 80 in 1977 or something. That's the first time I remember.
Great car.
And it was a Passat with an Audi badge on it.
Yeah.
And it had a sort of normal accelerator pedal. And I can remember being about 4 or 5 and looking in the footwell of Dad's BMW. And it had this massive floor hinged, like organ pedal with that very distinctive shape of rubber. It was a vertical line on like a tread pattern of a tire on the accelerator, and then a sort of more of an off-road pattern on the brake and the clutch. But I just assumed that the faster the car, the bigger the pedal. And I used to go around looking in the footwells of cars. I have a pedal fetish. There's no doubt about it. I love pedal boxes. I love the way we interact with them. I can't answer my own question because most of the time, bigger is better. But occasionally, you come across something like, an Alpha GTA with its little dainty pedal, or the pedal box is a bit wrong, but then the first time you get it right, and you just touch the throttle while you're on the brake, you think this is gorgeous. And I remember the first Mini I had. Remember the Mini would have the exposed metal. It was like a sort of penny a penny black sized bit of metal on the end of a rod, tiny, it was that big. And yet that felt, to come back to Chris's point, that felt right. But I still think that a floor hinge set of 911 pedals is the best looking thing I've seen in that part of a car. I know McLaren F1s and this T50's embellished as well. It's beautiful. They've made them artwork, but you show me like a G50 Carrera pedal box that's had a bit of use. The car bits are a bit frayed, and you see them sometimes almost coming back too far towards their intended user. And that bit of me melts, I have to say. So I'm sorry I asked a slightly oblique question, and that it was entirely meant for me to answer. There you go. How selfish.
There is a wonderful little film. I'll if I can find it, I'll put it on here. James Hunt had a size 10.5.
Yes.
And he used to cut. He couldn't fit his feet into the car. So they actually cut the tops of the shoes off, and his toes stuck out of the shoes when he raced.
Somebody put that on our little chat this week.
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah,
that was,
I think it's an incredible thing to see. They literally sawed the front of the shoes 2.5 inches, and his feet stuck right through the shoes.
His toe is sticking through the top of the pedal.
Yeah, I'll find it.
They didn't have that in Rush, did they? I don't remember that.
I think if you wanted to demonstrate the difference between modern Formula One and what it was like when you had manual gearboxes, that's what. If you had a pedal cam of the extra skill and work a driver had to do with 3 pedals, I think I defy any young viewer to go, "Wow, what did they have to do all that?" Yeah. Once you start to really get, I mean, that's another subject entirely. But I was watching some lovely footage of Trans Am and NASCAR on street circuits, where over there they toe and heel. So quite often they have the heel on the brake, and then the top of the foot goes onto the throttle, and they're left foot braking because the brakes are running out. So they're left foot braking to bring the pedal up the whole. Honestly, it's like a dance.
I don't get that.
It makes old Walter Rall in the Quattro look like he's being a bit pedestrian. Yeah. There's so much going on. It's incredible. So much sort of what's dexterity? Pederity. I don't know. Is there an equivalent? It's remarkable to watch. Anyway, right. The next part of the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. What are the worst brakes you've ever experienced on a car relative to its overall performance?
Can I ask? Can we just listen to Neil for the next 20 minutes, please? Because he'll have driven all of them.
No, but I only do one because the question is always one, not a list.
Oh, that put you in your place, Mr. C, didn't it?
It did rather, actually.
I'm very disciplined.
You are.
Because I do have 3, but I do no, but right at the very end, I do my little notes in my Apple on my phone when I'm in bed, and then but right at the end, I choose one.
Yeah, you're very disciplined.
Can I write this down? There's obviously a technique to this.
So I've got optionality.
Before you give us a lovely answer, can I just say you're very disciplined, except in the art of resisting buying cars.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've always got 3 just in case I go last. And it's very unlikely that all 3 will be chosen. So I've always, it's a spare pair of underpants being worn strategy on a podcast. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Am I going first?
Yeah, you are going first.
Well, the worst brake is not necessarily the worst brake, meaning they're not the shittiest brakes, but I felt them the most horrible of brakes. In my view, the most
scary,
or just no pleasure. Just I have a proper addiction. I've owned most bloody cars, and I always wanted a Citroen SM.
Yeah,
right? I always wanted a Citroen SM. It's Thunderbirds. It's the coolest fucking thing. It looks like Thunderbird 2, doesn't it? This thing. The fact you've got that button, it will lift up and you can show off because it's going up and down. It's Concorde with 4 wheels. But the brakes, actually the brakes are very good. That's sort of my point. It's why I'm not really answering the question very well. But it's a button.
Yeah.
And it's a button that literally is, it's like this. So it isn't a pedal at all. It is genuinely, a button. How
much travel does it have?
None.
Is it almost pressure rather than movement?
No, it's an on and off switch. When you go in like public toilets and you've got to bang the tap and you've got like 5 seconds of the tap. So you've got to quickly get the soap off your hands before the tap stops. In fact, my gym in Camden's got that in the shower. You're constantly banging the thing. You've got to whack this shower about 30,000 times to have a shower. It's like that. It's just a button. It's on off. And it's this big.
That's a good prop.
So the minute you get in this car, and it is like driving a hovercraft anyway. I mean, it's, even for me who, is not the world's best driver, but, I'm safe. I never have crashes or anything. I'm poodling along, trying to look cool, hopefully not breaking down, the only 2 important things. And then you try to brake. And if your wife's with you, you're proper knackered because her head is going to go through the bloody windscreen because you've got this thing that is like on and off. And I thought...
Do you think it was a bad one?
No.
Because I've driven a DS, a late DS, and you're right, it is a button, but you can modulate it, and I do believe you get used to it. It just takes a long time.
Maybe it's my lack of skill or my big shoes. It could
not
be
saying that, but when I first drove one, I thought to myself, what on earth were they thinking of here? I just thought, what are they thinking of here? Everything else in this car appears to offer
these are my Citroen SM shoes.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Aren't they a prop from Inglourious Bastards?
Yeah.
These are holding up.
These are ex-Oliver Reed shoes for my Citroen SM.
Literally.
No, but if you have, big shoes, lack of skill, and a Citroen SM brakes, it's not really a good cocktail.
But you're still here.
Yeah, you are still here.
I sold it. I sold the car.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was interesting. It took me a day and then I got it. But it's the only part of the car you thought
it's not enjoyable.
The rest of this is cleverer than anyone else. This bit, don't know what they were thinking. Okay,
Chris, don't push that line of argument too much because Neil will go and buy it back.
Okay. Well, no, we want him to buy it back, then we can use it.
We can see.
I know where it is.
Manish, this is a stretch for you because I suspect of the two cars that you've owned, one of which you haven't extended in this manner, and the other's an estate car, so you probably wouldn't. So feel free to tell us a story about your childhood.
Why do I come? I but the exact question was, what are the worst breaks you've experienced on a car relative to its overall performance?
Yes.
Right? So this is all about, for me, telling you a story about something that is performing, that's got mind-blowing performance, but the brakes don't match, either in a good or bad way. Neil has done the, oh my God, these brakes grab. I'm going to tell you the other way. A good friend of mine, who I won't name, but in 1976, bought himself a Lamborghini Countach LP 400, red with black leather. Seriously, 1976, lives in Hampstead. He's anyway, he just told me this story, and I just had to say it. So the worst power to braking ratio you can have in a car that's got 375 horsepower is no brakes. And this is what happened. He got the car, he drove it outside his house, and he was going down Hampstead High Street, and he went to brake, and there was no brake. And he went to brake again, and there was no brake. And he did that all the way down, trying to avoid killing people. Eventually, he managed to pull up when the gradient changed. He phoned Lamborghini. They sent a technician the next day. Somebody flew out from San Agata, fixed his brakes. He didn't tell me what was wrong with his brakes, and he sold the car the following day. He owned this car for 48 hours.
They're not good brakes on a.
He just said, when you've gone down a hill with loads and loads of people and you're pressing the brake repeatedly in a car like that, you just don't do that twice. So he got rid of it.
I mean, the Espada has whatever technical thing it is. You've got to pump the bloody brakes. So if you drive 20 miles on the motorway and try to brake, there isn't as much brake as if you have to give it a little couple of bangs, whatever that is.
Bring it back up and bring the pedal up.
Yeah, you've got to give it a little couple of nudges, otherwise you've only got half the brakes in an.
Wait, what's the theory behind that? Why?
I don't know.
Oh,
I've had them looked at, and they're like, no, that's how an Espada breaks off.
So to be pumping.
You've got to give it a little. Brakes. Yeah. You first go. It's tricky.
Chris Cooper, I'm not that I'm uninterested. Let myself a drink of water. Carry on and tell us the worst brakes relative to the overall performance of the car, please.
Just before I do that, that French thing with the SM and the DS brakes, and you said this before, Neil, a couple of weeks ago. The coolest French cars are Citroens. But there's something about that part of French history. I saw a Fouga Magister. It was a French training jet in the late 60s. It's got this really, really weird V shape. So rather than having a vertical tail fin and sort of like that, it had a little V-shaped thing. And that was the same sort of era that produced that Sud Aviation Caravelle, that beautifully.
I love that plane.
There's something about the French in the late 60s that just.
Well, it was peak Europe, wasn't it? Italy was the same. Peak Europe.
French. They got the
Aerospecial.
Yeah.
They got the bomb. They wanted to be independent, and there were so many sort of independent thinking about the world. So back to the question. Now that Mr. H has got his glass of water. Do you remember that M3, that E30 M3 DTM that our good friend Guy Spur had?
Yeah.
That would never run because it was breaking down.
Yeah.
And he and I did the young timer race at the Ring in it years ago. And because it was never running, the first time I got to drive it was in free practice of that young timer race at the Ring. And the first time I actually drove it was therefore coming out in pit lane, going down to that quite tight turn one. The brakes were so bad and so unexpected, I drove straight off the circuit and straight to the scene of the accident. There was no power brake. All the cars I had, they'd been in Caterhams, which are light, or big GT stuff, which had power brakes. And this was neither light nor power brakes. And I was just genuinely, it was so slow and took so long to happen. By the time it eventually went off, I was properly embarrassed. It gave me enough time to be embarrassed because the brakes just weren't. So compared to its, I mean, it was quite quick. It did about 178 miles an hour on the Dossinger Ho, but the brakes, Jesus Christ! I mean, there's just nothing. Okay, they warmed up a bit.
Great noise. Those cars, great. Oh God!
So this did. It was the Eric van der Poel 1987 DTM winning car, which Guy bought for about €30,000.
Ooh.
I mean, the road cars are shit, but the race cars, that is a mega noise.
It was that car on the ring, Dossinger Ho, 9,500 RPM. Just, it's the only time I've ever actually felt scared in a racing car because it was quick. I mean, it felt quick.
It didn't stop.
There wasn't much car around you. Little bits of door, not much. I thought this was even then 25, 30-year-old car. 30-year-old car. I thought, God, if something goes wrong, it's dental records, really. So that was a bit sort of nerve-wracking. But I mean, the obvious one, but people tend to forget this these days. BMW M cars used to have shocking brakes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had an E36 M3 Evo, but the very, very worst one, I mean, the E60 M5, what you've got,
Terrible.
The E63 M6. If I brought it to one of those track days we did at the Ring after the end of the BLN season, and somebody drove it out, and I thought, oh, this would be good. M6 on the Ring, happy days. I thought if there was somewhere to get off the circuit before the end of the lap, I'd have taken it. It felt so awful and just nothing there and everything cooked. And
I think that's right, actually. You forget BMW brakes used to be quite shit.
They had this weird philosophy that they didn't need to fit big brakes. They'd have sort of floating calipers and stuff. They'd have, 4 pistons. And I can remember Gerhard Richter getting very shitty with us journalists, the then boss of M at the E60 M5 launch. And, by then Audi was doing massive brakes, RS models, and these things were just rubbish. They were made of butter.
Yeah.
they were.
So, well, there you go. They're on fire, and he'd go, "Well, that's because you can't drive properly." And we'd go, "Well, it's not really going to help you when people start firing them off." But Chris is right; they were. So I had that down as well. I had a couple. I had a general note that the norm was that brakes were rubbish. We're totally spoilt now. Most cars come fitted with amazing brakes. But the number of cars that you could take, off the shelf and drive around a circuit in 1998 that would handle more than 3 laps of being driven properly.
It's true.
Well, you couldn't do it in a 911. They would be gone. So, you'd need an RS 911 to do that. You couldn't do it in an M car. You might be able to do it in some sort of fancy, special edition TVR or something. But otherwise, most brakes were just shite. They would just, I can remember the filming of an autocar or a car magazine style get together for the end of the year or the height of the summer was determined by 2 things: tyre and brake life. You were told, don't cook the brakes. If you cook the brakes, we can't use the car for the rest of the day. And that you'd end up on the naughty step if you did one of those 2 things, because then you couldn't photograph it and get what you needed. But it was the brakes that was always the weakest side. Car makers spent nothing on them at all, and they weren't interested. And now we're very, very lucky. I think that
was it the advent of ceramics that changed all of that?
No, actually, it wasn't. Ceramics helped, but actually, ceramics created another problem, which is it's actually the car I'm going to list. The vehicle I'm going to list isn't a car at all. Actually, it's something else. The motor car that comes closest is the first generation Lamborghini Aventador. Now, I know Top Gear. Jeremy he went to town on these things, and they absolutely ridiculed them. But he wasn't wrong. And I can remember someone working on the TV show, might have been Porter, I can't remember, phoned me saying, "I saw you had an Aventador the other week. Were the brakes absolutely shit?" And I said, they were so bad that I pretty much, I didn't crash it, but I fell straight off the circuit. Now, it was my last ever job for Evo, I think. And we were trying to get them to do that glow in the dark thing, ceramics, make them glow. That's a bit stupid. But, you don't have to get that much energy in them. Once the light fades, then start glowing. So I did 2 laps of Portimao. Second time I came in and just went straight on. They just didn't work. So there was no, if you looked underneath the car, we jacked it up the next day and had a good look round. There was no real effort to direct any air onto these things at all. The car was styled to look nice. There was no ducting, really. There's no effort to get rid of the heat. And they just given the thing was stabbed rat fast in a straight line, I couldn't believe how shocking the brakes were. However, they paled in insignificance compared to the vehicle that caused me the biggest pain when it comes to having no brakes. This is a vehicle called the Wheelhorse 212H. This is, everyone knows, a lawn tractor that was designed in the late 80s. The Wheelhorse was and is, well, it's now called Toro, but they should be called Wheelhorses. They're great. It's the tradition of the American yard tractor, the ride-on mower. So you've got twin cup holders, you've got probably a Briggs & Stratton engine or something like that. It's got 12 horsepower, hydrostatic drive. And the way that it brakes on the gearbox. It brakes on the gearbox, and there are no front brakes. And you have a single pedal. You just smash it down to brake. Now, the vehicle also has a differential. I found this out the hard way when I was about 11. So where I lived, there was a driveway that had a sort of quite a steep slope and a gate at the bottom. And my father was a Victorian man that didn't tolerate dickish behaviour too much. He was also quite careful with the pennies. So he bought this fancy tractor that I was allowed to use under supervision. So they went out one day and I thought, well, I'm going to have the tractor out. Here we go. And I'm also a bit gun at this driving thing. So I went down the driveway as fast as I could, thinking I'd stop. The gate was closed. I hadn't reckoned on that at all. So I was probably doing a good 15, 20 miles an hour downhill towards this gate. And I thought, shit, I need to steer pretty quickly. But as I steered, one of the rear wheels came off the ground, at which point I just had an open differential and no brakes. So effectively, if you're on the front wheels weren't on the ground, if you lift one rear wheel up, you have no brakes. Whoever designed this thing, fucking Wheelhorse, I went into this gate at a severe rate of knots. I wrote the gate off. I wrote the mower off. I wrote my head off. And then I had to come back up and try and fix the front of the mower because I bent it all and everything. So I sat there with my mate and we got the model paints out from my Tamiya models and tried to match the red and the black. We thought
sienna.
Even painted the Wheelhorse writing on with some silver or white. And I can remember thinking, well, we've done a great job here. And about 3 days later, my father came in and went, so when did you crash the mower? And I went, oh, no, how can you tell? Well, there's a hole in the gate and it looks like a 12-year-old's tried to repair it with model paints. And I went, yeah, sorry about that. So there you go. Wheelhorse 212H is a fucking death trap.
So how did the brake work on the gearbox? Was it like a
it's hydrostatic
shoe or something?
It's all inside this gearbox. And basically you slow down on the gears. But that requires it's also got a differential for those tight little orchard maneuvers. It's got a really slick little differential. So when you lift one tire off the ground, if you hit the brake pedal, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah.
What does a differential do?
It allows one wheel to go faster than the other.
It allows differential speeds of the two rear wheels.
So if you've got locking diffs,
you've got a locking diff. It doesn't allow that speed differential, but it means that both wheels will always turn when you come out. Will want to turn when you come out the corner. Now's not the time. We're going to do we should about differentials as a separate episode.
We should.
Is that all right?
Yeah. To know about them.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's go to my photos. This is our two-car garage. Oh, no, sorry, Formula One. We've got to do this.
Yeah.
We've got to do this. Okay, let's start off. I watched this with you. Tell us your thoughts on Max versus Lando round 11.
Given that we said what we said last week.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm gonna break my second golden rule. Chris and I watched this with Luca in his drawing room, and the first thing he did, he said, when I watch a motor race, I like complete silence. So if either of you two speak, I'm going to go upstairs and watch it in my bedroom.
Oh, that's
probably
cool.
The most exciting race with the most controversy in ages. And Chris and I are looking at each other going,
yeah.
You couldn't make a sound. You couldn't go.
There was a lot of
it was very, very frustrating in its own little way. And once or twice when I did let out a yell.
For those of you who have the YouTube, that's us sitting in Luca's room and manage gesticulating, and you can see here. This is the moment at which, and you can see Luca in the corner there. Luca's in the corner going, "Just shut up, will you?"
Honestly, honestly, just once or twice he turned around.
Yeah.
total focus on this race. So, so if we just recap where we were last week, I'd read the Alex Kalinakis article about how Max had made an art of coming off the brake pedal into the apices of various corners, and his genius was all about making that look completely fluid and really rather wonderful. And the two racing drivers here said that was basically bollocks.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
We didn't say that, but we are feeling slightly uncomfortable.
We did say that he had a very specific interpretation of the rules.
Okay, exactly. Yeah. We felt it was acceptable. I really didn't, but I'm not a racing driver. I would just say that. I'm just going to, again, a couple of quotes, much better than I could do. Mark Hughes, this is what he wrote. He's always prepared to walk the tightrope in battle, but when it gets tight with a title on the line, he's prepared to go over center. As he himself said in one of his Viaplay documentaries a couple of years ago, you do everything you can to win. Sometimes you even have to be a dick to win. Now, he said that about himself in a documentary. And then I thought this was really, really brilliant as well. But the drivers could see what Verstappen had done. And that led, this is Andrew Benson, and that led to discussions with the governing body, the FIA in Mexico. The upshot was that the FIA agreed to revise the guidelines and to bring the new text for approval to Qatar in 2 races' time, taking into account the drivers' views on this sort of dive bomb defense. And that Andy Benson says that. And I mean, you said it, Chris, yesterday. About the first maneuver, he was a bit sort of, yeah, maybe it's justifiable. About the second one, he went, yeah, it's fair cop. You know, and he's a genius in the car. I mean, and everything that man says when he's out of a car, I just adore. You know, he's just a proper motor racing driver. But this, I don't even mind if he really did turn Lando into a bunny because he kind of was dominating him in some sort of ethical way. But I think if Shane Warne is bowling actual live hand grenades at
that's Cullen, a good
idea. I think that's not a bunny. I don't think that's a bunny. And I think he's been over the limit now in these situations, these kind of close quarter fights for years. We didn't see any of that last year, and we saw very little of it the year before because that car's just so good.
Yeah.
But the truth is, you know he is going to fight, and he's going to do everything he possibly can. And the most cynical thing for me, again, when I was reading Mark Hughes, was that he's only racing one person now. He's racing Lando, and his strategy was Lando can't win. Now, you may do the maths and go, actually, Lando had no chance. Carlos was really on it. I don't think we'll ever know. I don't think we'll ever know. Lando was stuck behind Max, and he was never going to make an overtaking maneuver. And one of my naughty transgressions while Chris and I was watching the race was when it looked like Lando was right behind Max, I shouted at the screen, "Don't do it. Wait for him to go into the pits." And I'm supposed to be somebody who likes motor racing. I just thought it was just so much better for Lando. Do not even try to overtake Max Verstappen because he's going to have you off. That is the percentage of this. And thank God Max went into the pits. And you could see what Lando's pace was like then when he went and got his heart. Off he went. So I think he's over
Schumacher, and he has a Schumacher, or was it all over?
You know what? I think it's almost worse because I think with Schumacher, a little bit like Senna, it was the odd, really high pressure, kind of like that 50-50, the title's at stake. We've got fucking 4 more races to go. And he's been doing this on and off now for, I don't know, 5 races.
Before I put this to Chris Cooper, can I just say one thing? It's fascinating watching. We've not got all the information here. We don't know the full minutes of what was said in that drivers' meeting, but I think we can all guess. And there was lots of reporting that there were direct exchanges between Lando and Max, which I think is, you'd expect that, wouldn't you? I find it fascinating that the FIA judges of facts, the driver standard marshals, whatever you call them, the stewards, they're held to a series of quite weird and sometimes arbitrary markers they have to use to make a decision. The thing about Max that I've always found fascinating is Max doesn't really play by those rules. He's clever enough to work within them and maximize them. But what Max does is he presents any opponent with a very simple proposition, which is, unless you get out of it, we're going to crash. And he's done it for a long time. And he's good God, it's got him 3 world championships. He's maximized that potential, but it might be that that's coming to an end. That way of doing things, and it's going to be fascinating to see how he adapts. And I think he will surprise us. He might adapt in a very mature, clever way. We don't know. Chris Cooper, what do you think?
This week, I didn't see the race. I followed your texts. I was doing something else on Sunday night. But I watched it again yesterday evening. Well, I watched it yesterday evening. And particularly in the turn 7-8, that was the kind of thing you'd see at a 4-stroke karting, just madness. I know you've met Dan Ticktum, haven't you, Mr. A?
Yeah, I liked him a lot. Yeah,
good nice guy. Yeah, he'd have been embarrassed if he'd been caught doing that. Yeah. It was the way he just piled up the inside of Lando and took them both off. I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. That's the worst kind of, it's a red mist. He completely lost it. When he was interviewed afterwards, he appeared to be completely calm and unrepentant. And somebody interviewed said to him, "What do you think about it?" He said, "Well, it's 20 seconds. 20 seconds is a long time. Next time, can I have a drink, please?"
Yeah.
Why has this happened? I mean, last week, you and I, Mr. H, were both of the view that it was hard racing and actually Lando is in a difficult place. And I, in terms of Lando, I saw nothing different this week. I think all I heard from him was, and I understand it, which was, well, I thought he was going to we're going to crash.
I suppose for me, the slight difference was I thought Lando, maybe circumstances and car performance and circuit layout, had left him in a state where he knew he could give Max a bit of rope and he'd hang himself, and it felt like he'd done that. So when he came climbing up the inside, the language of Lando's car was, I knew he was going to do it. My sixth sense told me he was going to be an absolute knob there, and now he's done himself. He's cooked himself.
Yeah. So it was beyond the pale, that the second of the 2 incidents. The first one, you've seen a lot, and I shared something with you at turns 1, 2, and 3 from must have been 2019, where Lewis did to Verstappen something similar, where he basically dived up the inside of turn 2 into 3, and they both went off. So other people do this, but this one felt different, and it made me think, why is it happening? And there's clearly a wider. We don't know. We're not inside. Some of us, I know, have sort of probably more knowledge about what's happening inside than others, but we can't talk about it sort of obviously in public. But it feels, looking at it from the outside, that culturally and behaviorally, there's something not right. Somebody should take him aside. Somebody needs to take him aside. I can't think in any other team it wouldn't have happened. Ron Dennis would have done it. Ron Dennis did it with Alonso when he just hired a 2-time world champion. Done it with anybody.
Yes.
Take him aside to say, son, that's out of order.
Instead, he turns up to the press conference afterwards with data traces going, actually, Lando was 14 kilometres faster in that lap, and he was never going to. I mean, that's just
just awful. The rules thing, Manish, you referred to. I saw a quote in Autosport magazine, an interview with George Russell, where he said they are talking about the rule. The FIA is talking about driving standards behavior change next year. And the drivers, and George said 19 of the 20 drivers wanted to introduce them for the next race.
You know what's interesting is that it shouldn't have happened until the next race, until Qatar. But I think Johnny Herbert was one of the stewards, was one of the experts, and I love him.
Who's that? Johnny Herbert.
Johnny Herbert, yeah.
Yeah,
people forget how goddamn fast he was. He was, yeah. But I think he just went, come on, sunshine. I mean, he just saw that for exactly what it was.
Piastri said something quite telling. He's a clever boy, isn't he? I know he didn't have the best weekend, but they were talking about it, and he went, maybe it's in response to Austin, he went, well, if there's a gravel trap there, you wouldn't have a problem. And he's quite right. This is the problem with modern racing circuits, with all this runoff and space and asphalt, is it's created this move called the overtake round the outside. Most of us old buggers have no experience of that at all, because if you went round the outside, you either hit a wall, a curb, or you went in the gravel. So I do feel sorry for drivers, because really your incentive is to get through the corner and make sure that anyone behind you can't sneak up round the outside, i.e. you have to use the full curtilage of the circuit to get out there to make sure that if they do come past, they're over the white lines. So it's massively confused by the way the circuits are presented to the drivers. If they're racing drivers, you give them an opportunity to hang it out round the outside, they will.
Yeah.
It's very confusing. But I have to say, I thought Carlos was just utterly magnificent all weekend. To see someone in such control, and to see a team like Ferrari that's jettisoning that talent, and to see a team like Red Bull that's retaining Sergio, it makes the sport so colourful, because on a human level, you're just totally confused, aren't you? You're like, so you've got this guy that he looks like a Ferrari driver. He drives with this control. Occasionally he does something that proves that he can be better than all the others, and you're letting him go. But Red Bull's got a bloke that's getting the bird flicked at him by a bloke who's in his 5th ever Formula One race.
Oh, that was good, that wasn't it? That.
And he's getting in all the wrong tussles, and good God, it was just a nightmare weekend for poor old Sergio.
It was.
Did you watch it, Neil? You must have watched it.
I did watch it. I mean, Sunday night, getting up at 5 a.m. I didn't watch it all, but I think, haven't you got to be a total arsehole to end up being a Formula One world champion? If you did the list over the last 50 years, I mean, Schumacher, he was awful, wasn't he? I know, bless him. But God, I was in Adelaide in whenever it was, 94, 95.
Yeah.
And he did so many shyster moves like that, but no one really remembers it. They just know that he won 6 or 7 world championships. And I think probably, I don't know, the Prost thing, heaven forbid, criticise Senna. But Senna was probably an arsehole often, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I know.
Manish won't believe it, but he clearly was.
He probably
all racing drivers are.
They were always smashing into each other in those good old days, weren't they?
Yeah. But the difference this time is, and I think the second of the 2 incidents looked like a childish, immature red mist. And you might have seen those once in a man said it earlier on, you might have seen that literally. The Schumacher thing with Villeneuve in Jerez in 97 was the last desperate act of a man trying to save the championship.
Do you want to hear something really random? I saw that car today at the Williams Heritage Museum, and they've left the lump that's been taken out of the side pod by Michael. It's still out.
Circle.
They went over and they said, we've left. And by the way, that's where he hit it.
I don't think any of it is red mist. I think it's ice cold blood calculated bastard.
Ooh.
Do you?
Yeah.
You don't think the second, because the first one looked very calculated to me. The second one just looked mental.
I think he's got ice for blood.
Yeah,
you may be right.
I have to say, I thought the second move was just ridiculous. But he is still, if I had a Formula One team and I had a pot of money, he'd be top of my list. I just think the performance he's dragging out of that car, he put that thing P2 in qualifying. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
So I'm just thinking, but Chris, this is the kind of, the painful bit. His lead is so great. I know he's almost certainly going to take an engine change in Brazil, okay? But his lead is so great that he could just drive himself to the championship here. He really doesn't need
That's
to.
Not in his DNA.
No, it's not in his DNA. And I don't think he can. I think, Lando, we all thought the Ferrari was going to just canter off forever. And you quite rightly pointed out that actually, if this is where this plays to Neil's point, I think these hyper talents are they're processing at a speed we can't understand. So Max is probably doing the math. He's thinking, if I had him off here, then it helps me. And if I can slow him down, it means he can't win the race. He's thinking all that at the time. I
get that.
It's all in slow motion to him.
Perhaps something in his upbringing is making him feel a bit desperate here when he really doesn't need to. He's just that good.
It's all slow motion for him. He's absolutely calculating it all with no stress.
By the way, we have got an absolute crackerjack of the end of the season. I mean, this could be better than 2021. So thank you to all of you hot shoes that are Formula One drivers, because you're making it very, very pleasurable.
And I wouldn't rule Ferrari out, by the way, for the Constructors' Championship.
Yes.
All of a sudden.
Well,
it's unbelievable. Red Bull are now third.
Yeah.
Here we go. And nice to see Zach and Christian get on well. So here we go. Two-car garage for this week. By the way, I've got a mutton vindaloo that's sitting in the oven at the moment, and I really want to get into it. We've been going for a long time now, so bloody hurry up, you lot.
All right.
You were a professional skydiving instructor who recently had an accident as a result of being overworked by your greedy employer. You've since vowed never to jump again. This doesn't feel fictional to me. Fortunately, two more things have subsequently happened. Firstly, you miraculously escaped without serious injury and have made a full recovery. Secondly, your man from Injury Lawyers for You secured a large settlement from your former employer. Hey, you crave adrenaline as you're no longer throwing yourself from an aircraft. You need a vehicle to drive yourself to work. A smaller car will now do, as you no longer have so much equipment. You live alone. You've £100,000 to spend on a practical daily car and something that will give you the same excitement as your former profession. That's 100,000 across the two vehicles. I'm going to let Manish go first.
I tried to imagine who this guy was, and you know who it was? It was Peter Sellers, wasn't it? It's Mandrake from Doctor Strangelove. That's all I could imagine. What I do, Jack. Do you remember him? Did they torture you, Mandrake? Yes, they did, Jack. As a matter of fact, did you speak? You remember when he turns around? He says, "I don't think they wanted me to speak. It was their way of having fun." Yeah, they make such bloody good cameras. I love that. I just love that scene. So I had to think about this. Jumping out of a plane, you fall at 1G, 10 meters per second, roughly.
9.8, if we're being specific, but
you're being really pedantic. But the point is that works out as 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds.
Nice.
That's your magic number. That's what you want. Okay. I think this guy.
I wish you watched Top Gear.
I think this guy did do himself a little bit of an injury. Now, I don't think he wants a car quite that fast. I think a second slower than that, he's perfectly happy. And I think there's something else about guys who like jumping out of planes. I think they like to feel the wind in their hair. They like to feel all of this going past. It's got to
on
be
behalf of Neil and myself, I'd like to say that is hairist, and you need to open this up, mate.
Okay, so okay. He likes to feel the wind rushing past his face. So it's got to be a convertible. That's what I think it has. So the pleasure car, I think, I had a quick look. It's got to be an F-type Jaguar. Then it has to be the R75. And it's 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. And I found a Quokka for £73,000. It's got a gammy back and it's fine. So I think it's going to be great. And then his second car, because he lives alone, and we've just been in Italy, and I found the perfect one. It's a 1967 Neil Manish E-Reg Fiat 500, but it's also one with the wrap down roof. It's beautiful. It's white. It's got 33,408 miles. It's got lovely red and white vinyl seats, and it was £19,995. And that's a little car for a single man. And you can drive that around London or wherever you want.
You're going to attract the ladies in one of those.
Oh, I think you probably would. So they would be my two cars for this man.
I absolutely love it. I have to say, people don't like F-types, but those later four-wheel drive ones are fecking quick, and they're British. They're good cars. And of course, a little chink. You can't go wrong, can you? Sorry, I meant that a different way. A little Cinquecento. Now, Neil Clifford.
Right. No one's going to beat this.
God, here we go.
And actually, 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds.
Go on.
I've chosen it. So, what's the closest thing to being a skydiver? It's got to be an aerial Nomad supercharged, right? You feel you're outside, right?
Yeah.
And it actually, I've just checked the speed. It does do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds.
There you go.
And actually, everyone, including me, everyone who bought one of those, then the day after it was delivered was like, what the hell am I going to do with this? So there's a lot for sale. And, you paid £67,000 because you ticked every option box because you're down in Somerset and feeling all lovely. And you can't bloody sell it. So you get one for 55 grand.
Yeah.
All the right suspension, all bloody extra £1,000 because you can move the steering wheel to the right and left. I mean, they really do you over down there in a very charmingly Somerset way. Beautiful company. But what the hell are you going to do with the Nomad? So I'd have that. And then the daily, you got 35 grand left, maybe 40. I'd buy a GR Yaris.
Oh,
it is the modern Integrale.
Yeah.
It's actually a great little car. I'd take it to Lichfield and I'd do the little Lichfield tune up because I'd have about 5 grand left. And he puts that special little box down by the passenger thing and you can fuck around with all the tuning. And you can, whatever it does, I don't know, but it looks cool. And, stick a Lichfield sticker on it for free. And it'd be brilliant. And actually, for 100 grand, that is an unbeatable 2-car garage, actually.
very good.
I'm going to struggle to beat that. It's really good. Chris Cooper, on the back foot.
Cameron wrote this. So we were talking about trying to find a 2-car garage. And I said to him, can you find a 2-car garage session this week? And about a minute later, he said, I can't find one. How about this? So I thought, I hope this is not autobiographical. Otherwise, it's been a lot of stuff I don't know about.
Oh, he wrote the bloody thing.
He did, yeah. He wrote it in about a minute. Came straight back. And so I said to him, okay, what would you do? It's your suggestion. What would you do? So he said, well, the daily. I said to him, what's his day job? He said he works for a construction retailing business.
Wow. But just came straight out with it.
Came straight out. He sells diggers and Manitous and sort of all that kind of stuff. So his daily, he said, have something like a Mercedes A160, a baby Mercedes A-Class, 10 grand.
Oh, he's going
Doesn't
large.
need to do anything.
He's going
Just
large.
going large on the second car.
Going large.
Yeah.
And this is Cameron Oliver. I said, what's your second car? He said, it's an Ultima GTR.
Oof.
Ooh.
Oof.
Ultima GTR. We'll put a picture up in a minute.
Yeah.
That's a monster. Yeah.
Chevrolet Super Duper. We had a bit of an argument over whether it'd be supercharged or non-supercharged. The current model, which might be slightly beyond the budget, has got 900 horsepower, something silly.
Those are quite normal father-son arguments as well. Quite normal.
Yeah. And I said, isn't it nicer? In fact, our mutual friend, we met at the BRDC track day.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
He's just got an Ultima GTR.
For me, they're part of the British canon, aren't they? They really are.
Yeah,
it's
that's
the car
cool.
that Gordon Murray used as a mule for both the F1 and the
T50. Yeah, it did.
Every year we'd get the fastest cars for the Autocar 0 to 100 to 0 competition. Every year you'd drop an Ultima in at the end and it would win because it would basically do a wheelie down the mile straight and then you'd basically lob it sideways and somehow it would stop.
It's a cool thing. I don't know why there aren't more people driving around with them. They're probably sort of not very good.
I think people.
They're very good. I mean, they're
right.
beautiful.
My battery's about to run out on my laptop. Wait there 1 second. Now, here we go. Well, I wanted to. This shows you how my adult brain works. I somehow misread skydiving for hang gliding, and once in my head I had the word hang glider, my brain references to hang gliding. The greatest description of a folding fabric roof for a sports car I've ever read, which I think it was an Evo or it was Autocar, was the great David Vivian, one of the greatest motion writers of them all. he described the Dodge Viper's roof as looking like a crashed hand glider.
Oh, I love
which
that.
I thought was a great description. So I thought it's got to be a serious one, Dodge Viper. So
That's
I could go
good.
around telling everyone
That's
I know
good.
that David Vivian once described his roof like a crashed hand glider. So it's a series one Dodge Viper. If you ever see one from behind, good God.
I had a black one. I had one. I own one.
No.
There's
Yes.
There's road presence, and then there's a Dodge Viper in the UK, isn't there? It's like this. How they made an 8-litre V10 sound like a 4-cylinder.
It's a cool car.
Okay, so it's a Dodge Viper because he's going to make himself feel good. But at that point, he feels so good about himself. And if I'm asked the question, what's your everyday car? For the next 3 months, I'm going to say it's an F80 Alpina D3. It's the best car you can buy for the money. He's got the estate one.
Well, he can.
But Alpina D3 estate. Alpina. So, yeah. But I think Dodge Viper and David, if you I wouldn't thought you listened to this. Hope you will, because good God, you are a great writer. So before we do our music, which has to be chosen from musical this week, I want to just show you a piece of correspondence. I'm not very good at looking at correspondence on social media, but this is my favorite one. Yesterday, I posted a picture of my dog reclining on the sofa with his testicles showing. And where his balls were, I put the word spuds. And you can see here the picture I mean. He is well blessed, that dog. I placed him like that for the photograph, and he stayed there for about 25 minutes.
If you had those spuds, you would.
Anyhow, I had lots of responses to this that I looked at in the airport yesterday. I had nothing better to do. I had several hundred people reply with a lovely comment or an arch observation about my dog's balls. But this is the best one by miles. There's the writing at the bottom there. It says, so this is the response to my dog's testicles. Have you ever owned an E46 M3 and would you ever get one?
That is brilliant.
Anyway, I was laughing on my shoulders were going in the airport and some people were looking at me thinking, my bloke has lost it. But I just thought,
those are our people.
They are our people. I asked my learned colleagues to please choose a piece of music from a musical because I love listening sometimes to musicals and old scores in the car with my children. And so I'm going to go straight to Neil Clifford.
The best musical by far is Joseph.
Yeah,
and they're all great. And sometimes we put it on as a family. We drive along and sing the whole thing. But Jacob and Sons, Joseph's Coat, which is track 3, is just, knockout. That man's a genius that wrote that. No wonder he's a billionaire. He deserves to be a billionaire just by writing that. It's amazing.
Okay. Manish Pandey.
I think the greatest musical ever is actually The Sound of Music. I think it is absolutely unmatched. The story's unmatched. The acting's unmatched. I was a massive Christopher Plummer fan. And there's a beautiful moment when he finds all those fucking Nazi flags hanging outside his house. He's very, very angry. And you see his anger and he sublimes it into singing Edelweiss, just puts the Nazis off. Nice. It's a beautiful song. It's got such a deep political meaning. And they all just stand there clenching their jaws because they can't do anything about it. And I love it. As an act of defiance, as a beautiful song, as a very handsome man in an extraordinarily powerful musical, unmatched.
It's really good. Yeah, that's really good.
Chris Cooper.
My choice is not the greatest musical, but it is The Greatest Showman.
Oh.
And my favourite song from that, Listen to the Car, is The Greatest Show. Hugh Jackman, Zac Efron, Zendaya, that crew. It's just so uplifting and driving a million miles an hour. The Greatest Show.
Yeah.
I've gone for The Greatest Showman as well, but I've gone for This Is Me.
I had that on my list.
But I do. Oh, good God, isn't that good to listen to? Aren't they wonderful? I think it's going to be music. It's going to be musicals in the car for the rest of the week for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell, we look forward to irritating you all next week with more idiotic talks on accelerator pedals, Formula One, and musicals. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for Manish Pandey, myself, Chris Harris, Chris Cooper, and Neil Clifford. I'm off to eat my mutton vindaloo.